What's the creepiest true story you have, or one someone has told you? Friend explained to me why she took sleeping pills. Apparently when they lived in Georgia, they bought an older house, rich family, very nice home, which had some character. She claimed to find some old purple dinosaur in the crawl space while her dad was fixing some plumbing. Played with the dino for a few weeks, always slept with it in her bed, among other toys. One day, she woke up to it staring at her standing on her chest in a different molding position than when she had found it, or it had been the past few weeks. Set it aside. Then next 3 weeks, same thing. Didn't matter if she put it on the floor, in a drawer or anything. One day, she locked it up. Couldn't sleep, heard the drawer unlock, open and slam shut. Slight footsteps, and it was back on her chest. She was scared. So scared. She pretended to sleep while it shifted and sat on her chest and watched her sleep. She told her mom the next day. Her mom didn't believe her until she was allowed to lock the darn thing in their room. Same darn thing. They moved to another house after other paranormal things started happening around the house. The dino stayed at the original house. Buried if I remember, right for a year and a half. One day, it appeared at their new house just standing like they found it on the kitchen counter. Got rid of it for good. I think they burned it and ditched it in the river never to be seen again. Friend has a repeating nightmare that goes away with the pills. She's older now and can't drink because of said pills. Has made numerous emergency hospital trips to finding scratches on her body the hospital claims are from night terrors. Now, maybe I'm just a freak about scary stories or about fleeting toys that talk. But the seriousness on her face and the tears that welled in her eyes, I was sold. Not sure if lies. But I believe whether I want to or not. Scary stuff. Kid you not, had trouble sleeping in her current house. Clarification, she was 13 when the dino thing happened. She is 10 years older now. Paranormal activity is weird to me. I disregard it all from a scientific standpoint, but I have grown up in a house where I just can't explain the stuff that happened. So, I just try not to think about it, like how the universe has no edge. But anyway, this house. So it was an old house in New Zealand. My family lived there for about 5 years, and there were many haunty things that occurred during that time frame. We had the normal doors slamming when there was no breeze. Many times my sisters and I would hear footsteps from the hallway when there wasn't anyone there. One night, my family was awoken by a smash. We all went to where we thought the source of the noise came from and found a vase smashed on the floor in the middle of the bathroom. It had been sitting on the windowsill above the sink and vanity where if it has just fallen, would have smashed into the sink, but it had managed to bypass the sink and smash about 7 feet into the middle of the room. My mother often claimed to have woken up and felt someone breathing on her face. My biggest scare was when I woke up one night in my room. My bed was in the middle of the room. Now I could distinctly hear a man breathing heavily, as if he was lying on the floor next to my bed. I was 7 years old and it was the most terrifying thing I had ever experienced. I have had a few asthma attacks previously and was trying to tell myself it was me breathing weird, but after holding my breath for a long time, I could still hear this guy breathing. I couldn't bring myself to look at the floor, but luckily, it was not between me and the door. It took me about 10 minutes to build the courage to get out of bed and run screaming and crying to my parents' bedroom. I slept in my mum's bed that night. When I was a kid, we moved into a new house. My earliest memory was that my brother's room was always cold, but I never thought anything of it. When I got older, I moved into that room, but it wasn't cold anymore. I asked my mom why the room was so cold, and she told me that when we first moved in, my sister actually took that room, and she had a lot of nightmares, and when she woke up, there was bruises up her legs and stomach. My mom would also get nightmares of a woman telling her to leave the house. She did a ritual or something and everything stopped, including the room not being cold no more. A few years later, my sister was getting married. My grandma and 3 female cousins I never met before came to stay at our place. My mom told me that grandma did not like staying at our place because she would always get sick when she visited. My 3 cousins stayed in my sister's room, and after the second night they were here, they were really scared and said that someone was trying to open their door. They kept seeing the doorknob jiggle, and when they opened it, no one was there. They came to my room and asked if they can sleep in there, and I thought they were trying to scare me, but I played along. I slept on the floor and they took my bunk bed, and suddenly, I hear the washer turn on. The washer room was next to my room and I went out there and turned it off. Then I went back to my room and outside my door, I hear chains dragging across the room, but when I opened the door, no one was there. This really freaked me out because for all the years I lived here, nothing ever happened. I eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I went to my sister's room to check things out because I was curious. When I opened the door, I saw two things that freaked me out. There was these faint black marks on the ceiling like footsteps, and the windows was open. What's so scary about the window being opened? Someone installed the second glass of the windows wrong, so it could only be open from the outside. We lived on the second floor and it was impossible to open unless you had a ladder. It freaked me out for a while, and when everyone left, nothing weird happened. I talked to my mom about it afterwards, and she said that the house doesn't like new people and females. This explained why I never saw or experienced anything except for the cold room and why my grandma always got sick. After that, once in a while when I was sleeping, I would sometimes hear a baby crying. I assumed it was my neighbor's baby, but never thought anything of it. When we moved out, my mom forced me to go say bye to all our neighbors, even if I never talked to them. When I said bye to the family next door that had the baby crying, I asked how the baby was doing, and they said they don't have a baby. About 7 years after I moved away from the house, I went back to visit. When I went to my room, it had changed a lot and it was bigger. I asked the current owner about why it was bigger, and they said that the closet that used to be in my room had a hidden space behind it, making the closet twice the size. I asked them if they found anything in there and they said no. I don't know if that had anything to do with all the weird stuff I saw, but it was just another weird thing I learned about that house years later. I live on a party house. Enough flurbo up thing happens here a lot on a normal day, but you really don't want to be here alone. I'm the only roommate that can stomach it, but then, I've seen some really terrible things in my time. I was home alone one night, and I was certain of this because all my roommates were in Minneapolis for Gay Pride Week. I was planning to have a party, but decided against it, checked the house, and locked up for the night. At about midnight, I heard the dog whimpering at my door and got up to let him out. As he did his business, I thought I heard a door slam upstairs. I thought it was nothing but a stray breeze at first, but it was a pretty placid night. As I let the dog in, I heard a huge succession of slams and began to think it may be someone trying to mess with me. I grabbed a butcher's knife and headed up the stairs cautiously. When I got up there, all the doors were standing open, which was weird as all heck, since my roommates generally shut their doors when they were away. When I walked down the hallway to check the bathroom door, I heard a loud crash from the downstairs, and a moment later, the dog went streaking by and hid in the bathroom behind me. Now more than a little freaked out, I went downstairs to investigate. I didn't see anything strange, so I stood still for a moment, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. I turned in time to catch my door slam itself shut and then fling itself open. I noped right the flurbo out of there. My friend and her husband used to live in this old Victorian home that once in a time belonged to some guy around the Civil War. It was in this little rural town with a population of some crazy small amount. They started hearing all sorts of crazy things. Boots stomping around when the workers had already gone home, a kid running and laughing upstairs, etc. When I was there one week helping them get the house ready for the impending arrival of my goddaughter, I was asleep in a first-floor bedroom with the two dogs when I started hearing footsteps go by the foot of the bed. I thought it was my imagination until I saw both dogs follow the sounds till it reached the door. 2 days later, my friend and I came back from town to find her non-smoker husband on the back porch smoking. He said he went to the attic for something, turned the light off and closed the door. As he walked away, he hears the light click on. He goes back and turns it off. He hears a giggle and this happens twice more. He turns it off and yells at the kid's spirit to knock it off. As he's walking down the hall, all 5 doors up there slammed. He noped right the flurbo out of there and ran till he got to the gas station to buy his first pack of smokes in 6 years. The house that I grew up with was pretty old and always gave me a really weird feeling. A lot of strange things happened while we lived in that house. For one, my sister, who was about 2 or 3 at the time, would say really strange things. Once while sitting on the couch watching a movie with my mom, she pointed up to the ceiling and said, "I want to go up there." My mother asked her where she wanted to go and she said, "Up there, Mom. With those people over there. They're nice to me." No one else saw anything, and we were too creeped out to ask further questions. Another strange thing my sister said in that house was around the same time. While my dad was giving her a bath, she asked him, "Do you remember when I used to take care of you and Mommy?" He was really shocked and he asked her what she meant. She continued to reminisce. "I remember when you two were really little. I took care of you." He basically noped right out of there. Not only did I personally have an outer-body experience in that house when I was 7, we also called the police one time because we heard glass breaking and people walking in my house. There was a lot of noise going on that night, like things tearing and breaking. My family was terrified and we locked ourselves in the bedroom we all shared. When the police got there, there was no one in the house. Nothing was broken and everything was fine. Every time I drive by that house, I get the creeps. I was very young, so I don't remember this at all. My parents told me this story many times. They firmly believe it happened exactly as I am about to tell it. My parents, my older brother and I were going apple picking. My parents decided they wanted to go to a different orchard this year than the one they have been going to for years, so off we went. We apparently stopped for gas at this old-time convenience store. While my dad was filling the tank, my mom said she went in and looked around for some snacks, but she said everything in the store looked old but fresh. Like, snacks from another era or whatever. So she didn't buy anything, but chatted with an elderly clerk behind the counter while paying for the gas. So, we leave that store and continue on to have an apparently amazing day picking lovely Granny Smiths and whatnot. On our way home, my dad stopped to get gas at the same convenience store that we had stopped at on our way to the orchard. But all was not as it seems. The convenience store was boarded up and looked like it had been abandoned for quite a long time. So my dad drove to the Sunoco at a rest stop a few miles down the road to get gas. My dad, being the ever-talkative guy, wound up in a conversation with an older fella working at the Sunoco. Turns out, that convenience store had been abandoned for over 50 years when the owner, an elderly gentleman perfectly described as the gentleman my mom had chatted with, was shot and killed during a robbery. I'm 22 now and certainly don't believe the story, but my parents swear by it 100%. They told me they did not say a single word the entire drive home. They were so freaked out.